All right, live.
Live?
Yep.
Okay. So this is our transactional situation. I'll reframe it really quickly. We've got a property built in 1940. It was purchased as an investment for a potential flip in 2017, hit the MLS on 2018. The offer from the buyer, we represent the buyer on our side. It was cash. The offer did get accepted. It's a 2-week close, 1-week due diligence. It's reported as having 2,600 square feet, and there is no appraisal or financing contingency. We find out from talking to the agent that the agent has a history of knowledge of this property. She lived in the neighborhood for 20 plus years, knew the lady who owned it, who passed away and sold it to the investor. So she's been in the house before. She knew the family well. In speaking to our agent, she did say that the only problem with the property was a downstairs bathroom. At one point didn't flow very well. So, and there was no seller disclosures from the previous owner. So that's kind of what we knew. So then the inspection goes underway. Our agent was a great move here to have a camera sent down, kind of expecting to find nothing. But what do they find? They kind of find images like this, where the further and further the camera goes, there's a little bit of water, a little bit more water, more water, more water, until finally the pipe is filled. And that's the image that they find. In marking where the camera was on the property, it's just inside the foundation wall in the basement where the main line goes out to the main sewer line. So that's one issue so far. The inspector, all right, what are we gonna do actually? What would you do with this issue of not having an appraisal contingency when it comes to things like the square footage?
Make sure that's correct.
Okay, how would we go about making sure that the square footage is correct?
Tax records.
Call an appraiser and come measure it.
Okay, we could just simply not have an appraisal, but have a measurement from an appraiser. Okay, by the way, they charge about $140 for that. They love to do it, by the way. It's pretty quick and easy for them. It's pretty easy money, and they stand behind it, and it's a non-biased third party. So Dave mentioned maybe we go to the county records for assessment. I think that that's one way to know if something's up or something's wrong. So we could verify that. Anyone be tempted to measure it themselves?
I kind of would, but I probably shouldn't know.
Yeah, so tempted to measure it yourself.
And see, I guess if I'm looking at that and I still want to win the offer, I'm like, I'm going to run out there. I know I can do the math.
Or measure it yourself, and if you realize that there may be some discrepancies, then that's when you have the appraiser come out.
Yeah, if there's a
and
material
measure it.
misrepresentation, you would know it. But if it's okay, I see how they probably added this a little bit wrong or something. Column inspector, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the inspector goes out, all good. So I'll tell you the rest of the story, all good stuff. The inspector goes out and he says, hey, just so you know, I kind of took my my laser measure tool, and this house seems to be more like 2,000 square feet. Now let me give you the price. The price is $320,000, and at 2,600 square feet, what's the price per square foot? Do the math real quick. We'll figure that out. Let's talk about how square footage become very material when it comes to value. What might we do there? Good remedies, by the way. Good remedies.
$123 a square foot.
123. Thank you, Robin. $123 a square foot.
Versus 160 at 22,000 square feet.
Okay, so if we keep the same sales price, 320, at 2,000 square feet, we're $160 a square foot. If we're 2,600 square feet, we're 123. All right, well, guess what where's the buyer going to go with this? Where's the buyer going to want to go with this? They're under contract at 320. Where's the buyer going to want to go?
They're going to want to take off at least 22,000 because that's the difference in price.
Okay, so that would be the difference.
Yeah,
everyone good?
22,000. Yeah.
So about $22,000 they want as a concession. After discovering that the property is smaller than what the MLS had advertised. So if I could, I want to maybe just start kind of making this. So remember, we had no disclosure issue about so this is what's interesting. The agent said there was a problem previously. Then we discovered the reality that it's still a problem. Okay. Then we're told, by the way, that the seller, the fixer, seller, investor, used to be an appraiser. So his assertion that it's 2,600 square feet is interesting, because once our agent says, hey, by the way, here's the text message from the home inspector, he says it's only 2,000, and his first response was, I stand by my number. So then our agent approaches the listing agent and says, hey, just so I could remind you, the duty, now that we've brought it up, is heightened on both of your parts, because we've made you aware that there could be a discrepancy. And because there is not an appraisal yet, we're relying wholly on the information that the seller is giving us, therefore making the agent and the seller more liable. After this discussion, by the way, this was a conference call between myself, our agent, and the listing agent. The listing agent calls back 20 minutes later and says, the real number is 2,000. So I find that kind of curious. So I'm going to put another box by that one. Okay.
What else don't you know?
Okay. All right. It gets better. It gets better. It gets better. The reason why this buyer wants this property is because they want to do some very specific landscaping in the backyard. They want to put a pond in the backyard. So as the buyer and the agent are in the backyard, the neighbor comes over. And the neighbor says, hey, I mean, amongst other things, were you guys aware that there used to be a food cellar in the backyard? And we're like, there's a food cellar? What kind of food cellar? He says, well, you know, the one with stairs, you go down and you can store food.
Wow.
So wait, is it concrete? And he goes, well, yeah, it's concrete. Now, concrete from 1941, pretty strong stuff.
The pond's already in.
Yeah, he's done.
It's
Yeah.
an underground pool for scuba diving. Yep.
So there's this, okay, so this is what gets more interesting. So we get this,
Wow.
the neighbor discloses that there's this food cellar in the yard. Okay? Anything in the seller disclosures about that?
No.
Nothing in the seller's disclosures about that.
But did the flipper know that?
He says he didn't.
But he filled it.
However, the agent says that, well, there was kind of a depression there and there was a board covering something. So it's kind of like this convenient thing of, well, I never lifted the board. I don't know what's really under there. And the seller just buried it. They just told the landscapers to just fill over it because they had re-landscaped the yard.
That's where the 600 feet.
So there
Yeah.
is some awareness from the agent again because of this history. Why am I telling you this story?
Well, the agent, I mean, as agents, we have a responsibility to vet our sellers because sellers are liars. I mean, not usually, excuse me, sellers can lie.
We are recording.
I
you know, Robin.
apologize.
Not all
I mean,
sellers.
I mean, what do they say?
Sometimes
Buyers are
people.
liars. Sometimes people, yeah, forgive me. So my behavior should have changed because we have an audience, a different audience. So the point is that the selling agent had a responsibility to ask more questions about that problem that she noticed.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. There's more like what's under the board.
Yeah.
right? And I think it's a little interesting to say that I conveniently don't remember the seller, the root, this root seller thing, when she said that she's known the house for 20 years, right?
She's probably
So
been
that,
there.
that first fact right there, the agent had this special knowledge, is like that there creates the biggest buyer's beware kind of liability. Just, she's seen the dispensations herself.
Yeah.
Just like the neighbor knew or had reason to know of the seller. Why didn't she, or something like that?
Yeah.
But that makes it tough.
Should the agent have a duty to read the disclosures from the seller and at least verify whether or not the things that she knew about the property
Yes.
were actually on the disclosure? What do you think about that?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes,
Yeah?
absolutely.
Absolutely a duty to read them. But what do we
Absolutely.
typically do with seller disclosures in real estate?
For them.
We kind of go
Down the columns.
like this.
I see, so.
Here, these are the disclosures. That's kind of how we treat them. We don't read them, we don't go through them, and we just, because the seller's duty is to disclose and it's not ours fundamentally to do that, then we kind of avoid them. Yeah, not a good idea here.
But you definitely, I just recently will put a home under contract that I grew up in the neighborhood as well, and actually was across the street from this home. So there were a lot of questions about different things, and the current owners knew some of it. Some of it they didn't. I knew it, all of it, for the last 50 years.
Okay,
or
yeah.
40, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I did go through the disclosures because that helps me to be able to answer questions that the buyers have as the selling agent. And I felt if I have the information, I have to, so I wanted to make sure, oh, you put this, is this what you did? Did you know that this was here before? Did you change, and they had filled in the backyard.
Yeah.
They
had filled it in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I knew what was there before.
So why do you think it is that people tend to do this, brush it over, brush it under the rug, bury it with the landscaping, minimize it? Had one seller, I've told you guys the story before, where the plumber was there in the basement. They'd replaced the lateral line. The plumber said, "Would you like me to send the camera down the line?" And the seller said, "Don't you send that camera down that line." Why do people do that?
They don't have to disclose.
They don't
avoid. They think they don't have to disclose. If they don't know it, they think that if they don't know it, then I don't have to disclose something I don't know, and so they avoid knowing. Is that a legal basis for protection from the seller? Is there a legal basis to say, well, hey, I never went down there, I never went up there, I never looked under the rug, I never sent the camera down the line? Is that a defense?
No.
It isn't a defense.
It's to be,
Unless it's something that would be hard for a normal person to ascertain, like black mold. How do you know whether it's this kind of mold or that? Oh, I think there's a little bit of mold. Sometimes that'll be indefensible, or defensible.
Yeah. So there's certainly layers of where you think, well, common sense. But there is something that I think we need to get our heads around in this legal concept, okay? And do you remember from real estate pre-licensing school the concept of constructive fraud? What's the basis for constructive fraud?
Like willingly, knowingly to defraud. It's like you knew it and you chose not to disclose it.
That's not
constructive fraud.
Constructive fraud.
If you knew it and you didn't disclose it, one of two things have happened. You were either asked and you misrepresented, or you weren't asked and you didn't disclose, but you didn't know something. Like there's a root cellar buried in the backyard. Now who's going to care about that? The thing's 2 feet under the ground. Who's going to care? I'm not going to tell anyone, so I don't disclose it. But I was never asked either. So the issue of this avoiding, I asked, why is it that people think if they don't know, they don't have to disclose? Constructive fraud is a reasonable person should have known. And I think in this case, we've got enough, I guess you'd call it speculation, but there's red flags here. How does the agent know? And then why did the seller say, oh, to the landscapers, this is his own testimony, I guess you could say, go ahead and bury it. Bury what? What are you burying? Why? What were you instructing the landscapers to do? Bury something. Where is that in the disclosures? It's not there. Even if you said, I don't even know what I buried, right? Mm-hmm. There's a duty to say there's something buried and I don't know what it is. And this is not an out. Allie.
I'm sorry. Okay, so in 20 minutes, you found out that the square footage was off too.
Yeah, we found out the square footage is wrong. We've got water in the main line and we've got a root cellar buried in the backyard. All three were misrepresented.
And I think they're all intentional.
As somebody who owns a house, and especially an older home, you are going to lift that and go down there because who knows what's down there? Maybe that old lady was hiding a bunch of gold down there or money down there. You're going to go. You are going to go down there.
According to the neighbor, according to the neighbor, they filled it with branches and debris and sand. And he, the neighbor, says that, yeah, he watched him fill it up. There was nothing down there but garbage and debris.
So it's all intentional fraud as opposed to constructive fraud, correct?
Yeah, it's not like he should have known. He does know.
He knew about the square footage.
Yeah.
He knew about the cellar, plumbing.
How does somebody who's a previous certified appraiser, oh, and by the way, a real estate agent, used to be a real estate agent.
Wow.
He's no longer a real estate agent. Say, oh, sorry, I misadded the numbers. And then say, oh, sorry about that. And then say, yeah, but the price stays the same.
Yeah, it's negligence for him not.
It's all intentional fraud because he knows about all of it. And
so the buyer at this point is out $630, the combination of two different inspections. So the buyer is asking our agent at this point, you know what? I want a refund on all those inspections. All I did was benefit them. All I did was go in there and tell them everything that was wrong with their property. And I found out that they were dishonest and not a seller I want to purchase from. Do you think that's a pretty good argument?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm gonna wrap this up and we can move on to another subject. But I was thinking about something on how we look at liability from an agent standpoint. Maybe I'll write it right here. I was kind of thinking about a code system that, you know, the kind of like the terrorist thing from the government.
Level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, we just keep going up these levels. And did the agent, you know, look, maybe you're not a part of the transaction. You're not an agent, you're not a principal. Maybe we go a little higher. Now we represent someone with a contract. We have a duty there now. Now we go up and we say, actually, we have more knowledge of the property than a normal agent would have. This is an arm's length. Maybe there's another one that says that I'm related to the seller. What if the agent was related to the current owner? Would that be a heightened duty?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And that's what
probably had.
And then we go one more. What if she has interest in the property and is also a principal? So you can see the liability is kind of raising the duty that the agent has. And so I kind of wanted, do you like that idea? Kind of a, hey, by the way, the transaction you turned in is a level 4 kind of a thing. And so, but maybe that triggers something internally, like let's make sure that there's paperwork audits from a couple of sources instead of maybe so maybe admin are looking at this, but maybe anything above a level 3 or a level 4, whatever we decide, gets broker audit. Maybe if it's a level 5, it gets 2 brokers audits, and if needed, the broker could decide if attorney needs to audit. As again, all as a protection. Like the idea?
Yeah.
Like the idea? Okay, that's kind of what I'm kind of playing around with, is that idea. The other thing is to talk about, let's get down into the details. I told the other agent on the phone, I said, listen, whether this buyer buys it or not, this thing about the root cellar, you should get that neighbor to go out there with a flag and say, somewhere right in here is this root cellar that we buried. It might be concrete, it might be wood, it might be filled with debris. We had the landscaper, there was a board here, that's what we know about it. If it's important to you, then you should do another test. Because when you don't do that, where's the burden? On the seller. So why would you not over disclose? I mean, would we have been better off to send that camera down the line? This is a whole nother, we have a potential lawsuit. It's a mediation. I've told you guys this story before, but it was $16,000 invoice to dig up the main line. And the seller stood in the basement and said, don't you send that camera down that line. So it's interesting, isn't it? And all of this stuff is, oh yeah, there's kind of like these excuses for all of this stuff in this transaction. Never find yourself with this. We got to counsel with our sellers to, look, go a little further. Like, then what did you bury? What do you mean you buried it? You said the landscapers, you just told them to bury it. What did you bury? Well, I don't know. You have no idea what you buried. Say, well, we better say that we buried something then, right? We buried something in the backyard. We don't know what it is. Okay? I mean, you see what I'm saying? That's a lot better than not saying.
Well, yeah, because from a disclosure standpoint, once you get that and say we buried something in the backyard. Now, when your inspection comes in, you're going to say, hey, take a look at the backyard, find what was there. You're going to do a little deeper dive because you've disclosed it. I had the property in Deer Valley. We had a leak. We disclosed it on the seller's disclosures.
Yeah. The
inspector went extra into that area where the leak was. We found corrosion on the pipe. Next thing you know, the lodge's general contractor, whatever, came up, looked at it, and they all took care of it. And it was completely wiped away, but the guy wanted like a $10,000 fix. And it was all remedied because we disclosed it, and the inspector found it, and then it was taken care of.
Yeah. Good. When people say, should I disclose, and then fill in the blank, whatever the thing is.
Yes.
Like, exactly.
Man.
Because, this is what people do. They go, yeah, but I already took care of it. Well, then why is it a problem to disclose it?
Yeah.
See, like you keep pulling at that thread, and all of a sudden you find out the real reason. They go, well, I just don't want to deal with it. Oh, okay. Yeah, we have to disclose that.
Well, I can remember because Lee and Carl said, hey, there was a leak, but it's been fixed. And I said, no, you need to disclose it. Because when that home inspector comes in, they can take a look and find out. And sure enough, they did find some additional things that tied back to that original leak.
And then the buyer does look at that and they go,
Absolutely.
oh, and they say, oh, yes, this is what they found. And you go back to the disclosure and you say, yes, but they did disclose that there was a problem right there. So that makes sense.
Yep.
And then everybody goes, oh, and you deal with it.
And now we find a remedy.
Exactly.
What if in this case, the inspector never said anything about the square footage? What if the agent didn't say, send a camera down there? And what if the neighbor didn't happen to be there when they were looking at the property?
They wouldn't have known until they started to dig the pond.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they go to dig the pond, they find, 18-inch concrete from 1940 that is very difficult to remove, and it wasn't disclosed. Then the neighbor comes forward and says, hey, what are you guys doing, right? Yeah, lawsuit for damages, the damages being the cost to remove the cellar. What about the first time they do laundry and the washer drains and it backs up after closing? What if they say, you know, this is interesting, 2,600 square feet, huh? Hey, Mom, just hold the tape there, right? Are my calculations on? So how would this look? Let's just, maybe before we put a bow on it, let's add up the damages. Square footage, 22,000. That's enough to get an attorney right there.
New line,
A new line, how much?
16.
16,000, 15,000, 10,000, whatever. Let's just say, we'll go on the low side, 10 grand. $10,000, what, 32? What was the other issue?
The pond, there, I mean,
The concrete.
okay, the fact that
You've
they
gotta
knew
remove.
and didn't disclose another basis or misrepresentation and therefore ties the line to the liability for damages. This would be a great case, wouldn't it? So whatever that costs, I don't know.
5 grand.
All right, let's just say 5 grand. We're up to $37,000.
We had a small claims court.
That's get an attorney, okay? The contract says shall mediate, so they pay a mediator, and they go, look, this is our case. Probably started off with a letter outlining the damages and the invoices for everything that they discovered. This much for the new line, this much to remove the cellar, and this much for misrepresentation of the square footage. And the fact that you are a previous real estate agent and a previous appraiser, sorry, you don't get the whoops card to play. We think all of this is intentional, and we're demanding $37,000.
that's really not enough, because that's a lot of grief to put somebody through that didn't think they'd have to do all this work. I mean, that's.
Inspection,
Get offered
lost
a 2-week
time,
close
but
with no
also,
appraisal.
Yeah.
if I was the seller, I probably wouldn't be too nervous,
That's
because
just
if I
not
only owned
enough.
it for a year,
Do
that's
you-
still enough time to go
do you-
back to the prior seller.
Yeah, do you think the agent and the brokerage would also be named in this? You
That's
bet they
so
would.
much.
Why?
Yeah.
Deep pockets.
Well, okay, there's insurance policies, right? And the way you get your hands on the insurance money often is to prove that the agent had violated licensing law. Did they?
That material
Well, you've got
misrepresentation.
this history of knowledge. You got the agent even said, well, yeah, I saw the board covering something. Okay? Right? Is the agent liable for putting on the MLS the 2,600 square feet?
Yes.
Absolutely. Because don't we have to verify where that is from?
And she said, well, I got it from my seller who's a previous appraiser.
And there's an option to check, right? for prior
Okay.
appraisal.
Let me add one little other piece of information on the agent side.
She's married to him.
No. No.
Sleeping with
She
it.
got,
no,
she got
no,
food,
come
she
on,
got,
you
she got
guys.
food from the food storage seller.
No. 4 days ago, the agent was notified in an email about the square footage. The next day, they emailed back and said the square footage is this, but guess what's still on the MLS as of this morning?
Oh,
Really?
So look, you got time dates on the MLS, right? The agent became aware of the new square footage, and 3 days later, it's still not changed.
so they're still representing to everybody on the MLS that looks, oh, this is 2,600, okay.
Yeah.
And they're letting all their buyers kind of like,
Yeah.
yep.
Can we go in and hit the, what's the button down at the bottom that you say you get complaint?
Oh, that's tough.
Well, I mean, for the buyer, it's not a complaint, it's a lawsuit.
Well, yeah.
I think at this point, the buyer
That's
was,
a minimum of, that's just like poking the bear, just have some fun.
oh, well,
I mean, you got way more stuff going on here, but just in the material fact, you still haven't done that, shame on you.
yeah.
You know?
Oh, you mean on the MLS then? Yeah, I got you, Dave. Yeah, Mo.
Is there such thing as nullifying the whole sale after it's closed?
You mean undoing it?
Yeah, because you will never would have
Ah.
bought this property if you knew, if you had all this problem?
But the buyer really wanted the property.
Well, not
Not-
under these
not under
conditions.
those
Mark.
Isn't that what promissory?
To most
note-
question, no.
Walk away.
You're not gonna undo a recording. What you can do is sue for damages. You're not gonna undo the recording. I mean, one in a gazillion, but I don't see that.
Is the buyer going ahead with this?
We're gonna find out today. I don't know. I'm anxious to
Wow.
talk to our agent and see where they're gonna go with this, but I think they're probably gonna cancel. But then they're like, well, look, all I did was spend $600 and help this person figure out
If
what's
I'm the
wrong with the
seller agent,
property.
I'm like, let's give you 1,000 and take care of it.
Call it a
And,
day.
yeah,
Well, and
Absolve
it's
it.
$600 well spent though.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
absolutely.
Well, that's
So,
the
I
Better
mean,
to
it
spend
was like-
600.
It was the best $600 you probably spent.
Yeah.
Well, it is,
Yeah.
but to Will's point, it's now you've given that, all that information back to the seller to then put up, because now he's been notified of it, so he has to amend his disclosures to include all that.
Right, so the
So
suit would be
anybody
for
else gets the
unjust
benefit of
enrichment.
that $600.
But you said
Yes,
he
you're
still
absolutely
has it.
right.
You said it still says 2,600, right?
On the square footage issue, that has been not changed.
No.
And
Oh,
if someone were to go and look at the
Just, like,
property,
change that,
chances
like,
are
slide
Yeah.
it in.
nothing
Well,
else
right.
has changed.
I mean,
either.
I would hope that the agent would be proactive and change the square footage right away.
That's just lazy.
But
Could be.
Isn't that what due diligence is for?
But, okay, so
I mean, You
Dave,
agree to
yeah.
inspect on your own.
that's
dime.
true, you did,
Period.
we did, and
You
that's,
find something ugly, your choice is to either take it
Yeah.
or leave.
just so you know, Dave, the attorney representing a buyer in a potential lawsuit like this probably won't use the term, oh, you were just being lazy. They would use terms like it was intentional, it was negligent misrepresentation. And it had, that's the kind of language that you would see from an attorney when they finally connect with this buyer. It's not going to be, oh, you were just, busy that day or that week or that month. No, it's, I mean, they're going to come at them
Constructive fraud.
because they're going to try to get something from, they're going to try to get everybody going here.
And at this point,
Yeah.
I would wonder about the structure, I mean, as a buyer, potential buyer, what else do I not know?
Yeah.
I mean, and what else can my inspector not know because it happens behind walls? I mean, do we have faulty wiring too?
Yeah.
You know,
What else
Well,
could
you
it
have
be?
water tied to your electrical, next thing you know, you've got a fire.
Yeah. All right.
And then did they ever say,
Last
hey,
one.
by the way, we're buying this because we want to put the pool in the backyard? So the seller had another reason to know what they were doing specifically? Because then you would also be able to add as another item in your suit, you would be able to say, you would sue for unfit for its intended use, right? For its intended purpose?
Maybe not in that line, but where you're going with it is that the agent was told from day one why they were looking at this property.
Yeah, that's unfit
To-
for the purpose.
Yeah. So to put this pond in the backyard, that's why they were there. Yeah.
Cool.
So that is interesting, isn't it?
Don't want to be on that call.
So
Yeah.
what are we asking for?
What do you mean, like today in the real transaction?
Yeah.
Well, the buyer has to make a decision, don't they? Their due diligence is up Friday at 5.
Okay.
So this was, by the way, this was an extension, by the way. They extended it, but they did another, and the seller agreed. And this is the first extension, it's coming to an end. And I think the buyer has a decision to make. I mean, what do you want to do? So how would you structure a counter? You might say, or a due diligence resolution, you would say, the price due to the square footage price is off 20, so the sales price will be, so item number 2, resolution due diligence, purchase price to be 300,000. And then what about all the repairs? So you might say, well, the main line this and the this, we want under 10 grand, we'll take our chances, whatever.
It's a cash offer, so they.
It's cash offer, so there's no closing costs.
That says this is the price.
Yep.
period.
Yeah. Resolution to due diligence, item number 2, purchase price to be.
Yeah.
So, because we're on point, it is cash, so. If it wasn't cash, we could do closing costs and a price reduction.
Yeah, no, I would counter back with that new price that you feel that is there, and if not, we're canceling, or
The
we're gonna sue
buyers
you for
still want it.
misrepresentation.
Yeah.
Just the contingent cancellation that says price is this or cancel.
Yeah. Okay, you know what Billy Joel song I think of?
Honesty.
Honesty, such a lonely word.
Wow.
Okay, honesty, that's it. We'll wrap that one up. This is section 1 coming to an end. Now we'll turn the channel. We got to talk about an objection. All day long, you guys will be singing that song.
All day, every day.
Oh, shoot, I should have taken a picture of that.
It's on the film. You're filming, right?
That's right. Okay, I'll take a screenshot. Okay, here's the objection. Oh, sure. Walk out now, Allie. Uh-huh. Hey, yeah, I'll be right there. And then your phone rings. Oh. It goes like this. So here, objection. The seller says something like this. I'm just taking this from 2 agents who called me last week, and it goes. So this is kind of how it goes. First of all, the seller says, I agree. I agree. Berkshire Hathaway, is the best. So some version of that. Like, you're better. Your marketing's better. I get all that. Then they say, but. ABC Realty will, list it for, and then they say some number, 5% or whatever that the number is. And so it's an interesting objection because the seller says, Berkshire Hathaway is better. So if you'll do it for this, then I'll list with you because I concede you're better. That's the objection. It's like the flattery, but I'm not paying the price. It's an interesting objection. So I love what you have. You guys are clearly better, no question about it. And would love to see a Berkshire Hathaway sign in front of my house. But XYZ will do it for less. And but if you guys will do that, then I'll list with you because you're better than ABC Realty. Okay. We have an odd number with Allie gone. Okay. All right, let's try this. Kind of got a train of thought?
I just had this.
This happens? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a guy walk in and he was looking at a house and he started talking about he's got a house to sell, but he wanted to use Homey. And so we got to talking and I said, just out of curiosity, why are you interested in using Homey? And he goes, well, because I can save some money and then I can use it to put down on this house. I said, okay. So is it really just about the money? Because what are they going to do in marketing for you? Well, not much. What are you going to do regarding contracts? Well, not much. What are they going to do about legal risk? Not much. Okay. Well, last question, completely irrelevant. But if you need an attorney, are you going to call LegalZoom or are you going to go to an attorney? He says, well, why does that matter? And I says, because I think it's really close to what you're talking about. And he says, I'd go to an attorney. I said, there you have it. He says, I'm going to list with you.
Okay, good.
But it was really funny because he was so set on doing Homey, but he did it just for the cost reason. And I think when you give somebody that additional example of why you're trying to save money, are you really saving money?
Okay. You remember the skill set after the objection is, what question do I ask? That's the skill set. So everyone repeat after me. What's more important to you? 1, 2, 3.
What's important?
What's
more important to you? Getting the home sold or netting the most? Now what are they going to say? They're going to say, I want to net the most. So they're going to net the most. Okay. How do we go about netting the most? it means that we have to find the buyer that will pay the most. So I think the golden question is, how do we go about finding that buyer? Not a buyer, but that buyer. Where is that buyer?
You find them by casting a wide net.
There you go. And that's, in today's world, a lot of that is syndication. We've got to track that syndication. We got to know views. We have a saying today that the first showing is online. That's always your first showing, but how many people really looked at it? How many came back? How do we make informed price reduction decisions if necessary so you can net the most? There's a different, isn't it true that it's a different challenge getting it sold than netting the most? If they still don't get it, ask this. See, getting it sold, if that's the objective, then I'll be your buyer. And I'll buy it for, I posed this yesterday in Park City. I said, look, bring me a property that's about 85, maybe 90%, or 85 to 80% below appraisal value, and I'll close it cash in 2 weeks after we do due diligence. Done. And everyone goes, oh, wait, why is that not a good thing? Would you rather get the home sold or net the most? And they say, I want to net the most. Netting the most is a different challenge than finding a buyer, because there's always a buyer. But that's not really what we want, is it? We want to net the most. Netting the most means, to most point, is the broadest exposure to find the highest paying buyer. And in today's world, that's a multiple different mediums of marketing that we use in order to reach that individual.
Voice assisted on.
So
Key alert volume yes.
Sorry.
Home screen.
It's already being recorded, Mo.
Oh.
It's already being recorded, Mo.
Oh.
It's gonna be online.
I wanna.
Okay, all right, you wanna practice this? Let's do it. So team up, go ahead and grab the person next to you. You guys can be a 3 down there. Be a 3. Be a 3 down there. So go ahead, seller. Tell them that you like what you see. All right, but the other company will do it for less. If you'll do it for that, we'll list. Okay? Go ahead and say that.
Well, I really like what I see, but,
Okay, so.
budget was 21.
Yeah, so, I'm thinking about it's cheaper, it's simple, have a lot of homes. You know what I mean?
That's more important.
I can
What do you-
see that.
Selling the house for net
What's my report to you?
Well, netting the home and selling it.
Well, yeah, when you net the most.
Well,
what do you mean by that?
Obviously, I like everything else. I don't want to know the most in my pocket. So that's why I just wanted to negotiate your fee.
So,
But,
right, you
I
know,
go back
really
to home
we
Halfway, and
You
I
can
mean,
sell it.
our syndication, we have multiple marketing mediums to get
We have maximum
your home
exposure
the absolute
for our
most
property,
exposure,
which impacts
bringing in the absolute
helps us
most buyers compared to our.
range the
And that said, the buyer that that's gonna pay the most will be able to
I
reach
don't
that.
know, but they said that they would, if they would do it.
They would do it, but I think.
It's hard. I was trying to formulate that.
Yeah, so, netting the most means that you need the house with most exposure, and you have many avenues, in marketing. Many ways.
You know, I've heard that there's some homes that they, because they price it, right?
Okay, open this up.
It just scares a lot of people.
Like that. And then we just go to end stream right here.
So,
Stream.
this is showing the stream.